Today we're taking a look at what came in Judges Guild Installment O from October of 1977. Please stick around. I'm AZ Mountaineer. This is our channel, Old School Rules, where we celebrate the community of old school gamers and grognards who like classic RPGs, miniatures, magazines, and everything that goes with it. Today's video continues our look at the products of Judges Guild, and is the second half of their campaign setting called Wilderlands of High Fantasy. Hope you enjoy the video. As you know, if you've watched other videos, Judges Guild is one of my favorite companies that produced products for our hobbies back in the mid to late 70s and early 80s. We're continuing our look at their bi-monthly installments that's sent to subscribers. Judges Guild, as you know, had the idea of making products for referees or judges, or we call them dungeon masters. And this is installment O. It came out in October of 1977. And in the last video, we took a look at part one of the Wilderlands of High Fantasy. And today we're going to take a look at part two. So what did you get? You would get this newspaper, which is what their Judges Guild Journal looks like. Started like that last time. It'll continue for about another 6 or 7 issues like that. And then they switch more to a booklet. You get the Wilderlands of High Fantasy Part 2 16-page booklet. You get a couple of maps. One has more detail for judges and the other less detail, and it's for the players. As I mentioned, came out in 1977. Bob Bledsoe's the driving force. Right around this time in October of 1977 is when Bill Owen decides he's basically just burning his candle at both ends. He's working too hard, and he's going to step back from being a partner in Judges Guild. And so then it really just leaves Bob Bledsoe as the driving force. If you purchased this outside of the subscription, you'd pay $5.50 back in the day. You would, as I just mentioned, you got the newspaper journal, which is their version essentially of what might be like a fanzine, the actual content for the campaign with a couple of maps, and that's it. As I mentioned, it is like, and I did this last time, it's like reading the newspaper. You open it up, it unfolds here, and you can just read your newspaper, and it has all kinds of articles in it. This one has the headline, World Emperor's Legions Loom Large. And you see their icon up here, their price, they say 80 cents, which was the price if you just bought it by itself. Published by the creators of fantasy game aids for Dungeons & Dragons. And what's unique about that is they were one of the few companies that had expressed permission to actually use the words Dungeons & Dragons on their products and advertise it like that. I just finished reading this great book, and I'll do a video about it, Playing at the World, John Peterson's latest. And he talks in there quite a bit about different people that TSR sort of butted up against, saying, hey, don't use those, those words in here. Gary mentions in an interview, he wasn't really part of making that decision. That was Brian Bloom is the one, he says, who gave permission for these guys at Judges Guild to use this. But however it came about, it's a rather unique circumstance in the history of the hobby. This is issue 6, also known as issue O, and it's item number 51 on the booty list, as they call it. Okay. So World Emperor's Legions Looms Large, and it just says the city-state alarms have broken out among the populace. The World Emperor, who is a leader of a different city-state, right? Then you get the city-state of the Invincible Overlord, and then the World Emperor. And his emissaries have left the Silverlight Palace today with the ultimatum requiring increased tribute. Amidst previous rumors of an impending levy from the Empire to the southwest, the Overlord expressed confidence in dealing with the situation diplomatically. However, with one vast host quelling a minor rebellion near Warwick, the city-state's security is in question, with word of several Imperial legions moving within striking distance. And it goes on to say basically how they're all quite concerned about that. Over here to the side, I've got the credits. John Huber, Tom Zarbach, Tom Holsinger, Bill Owen, Bob Bledsoe, Debbie Bledsoe, Norma Bledsoe, and Mark Summerlett. And then illustrations, Robert Bledsoe Jr. and Pixie Bledsoe. At the end, we'll come back and look at this art here, because I think the art on the first page, again, really good. And it's not by Robert or Pixie, as I understand it. And then we have so we have this announcement here I just mentioned, and then have a little blurb at the bottom of the newspaper saying what's inside. Fighting skills for warriors and clerics, that's an interesting article. Detailing miniatures, advice for miniature painting, and then a couple of really large articles, Dungeon Scratchings and Sniffings and Dungeon Fantastic Furnishings. We'll talk about those. And then other features. And at the last minute, he's added TSR's Monster Manual and SBI's Middle Earth released. Okay, so the first thing is an article called, this is articles like a newspaper, right? Tips from the Tower. And he's got this kind of silly article about what to do when you end up with a rules debate at your table, and he's created this chart. This is a tongue-in-cheek article. And what is the judge doing on the down the left side, and across the top, what is the player doing? And it has things like, what did they do in the last sort of argument back and forth? Did they reiterate redundantly, ascertain appropriate analogy, switch subject suavely, make up facts, resume rhythmic rhetoric? It goes on and on. He likes alliteration, by the way. It's pretty obvious. And then in his chart, he says you'll do a point of basically damage. You give them the same hit points and you track it. Like, so if he reiterates redundantly and the player reiterates redundantly, then the player takes a point of damage. But if the judge ascertains appropriate analogy and the player makes up facts, then the judge takes 3 points damage. And so he's like, you go around the argument and you can score it, and then when one of them gets to 0, the other guy wins. That's kind of silly. Jocular judgment, just interesting information that's happened, right? So he mentions that the Silmarillion by Tolkien has come out and how awesome it is and how many sort of questions and other things it addresses in the world of Middle Earth. Superhero 2044, concept by Mike Ford, and designer Donald Saxman has come out, and they think it's a really great superhero game. Don't Give Up the Ship by TSR if you're interested in naval battles. And they mentioned that Judges Guild has been favorably reviewed by White Dwarf magazine that year. It's 1977. So they did make some critique in White Dwarf, which is something that they've talked about before, which was basically what should they put into their products, right? Should they leave a lot of blanks for the individual judge at home to fill in? That was their original idea, because they said that way it would be unique and players wouldn't be able to buy and read and know what was actually going to be in the dungeon. They might see what it looks like, but they don't know what's going to be in the rooms. But they say over time and based on feedback, they've evolved their thinking, because they think most people actually want the product to go ahead and fill stuff in for them. So that's what they're going to do. Shrewd slants from the sagacious sage. A play question. Should you allow your players to roll their own dice? He talks about, different people have different ideas, but they feel like when you can, you should. They feel like it gets your players more engaged. I definitely think that's true. And so he said he would allow players to roll to hits, saving throws, surprise rolls, and initiative, stuff like that. And said, in fact, what he does once combat is engaged, he'll tell them the hit points and the armor class of the opponent, so that they can help keep track, and it basically frees him up to think about and focus on other things. Some people don't do that, and certainly back in the day, it wasn't always done. Okay, so Tom Holsinger has this article, and I don't know if Gary and folks at TSR necessarily read this, or these were just ideas that were out there, but it's interesting because he sort of has a proficiency concept here he wants to suggest for Dungeons & Dragons. And what he says is people should not know how to use every weapon at first level. And so he's got a rule or set of rules for that. And what he does is he has you roll 3d6, and that's how many points you get, plus for your level. So your first level, you get +1 to whatever you roll. And that's your starting point. Now, magic users and illusionists, he said, they know how to use a dagger to stab or to throw. For whatever reason, that's the one weapon he gives you, and how to ride a horse. Clerics get the number divided by 2, and then fighters get the full amount they rolled with the +1. He says all other professions, those able to use swords, get the full number. So I don't know if he's thinking fighting men or if he's also including thieves in his rule, because he never uses that word, that class by name. And then every time you gain a level, you get that many points. So when you reach 4th level, you get 4 more points. When you get to 5th level, you get 5 more points, and so on. And then you can spend those. Every point of a weapon cost is a month plus 40 gold pieces. And so 3 points would cost you 3 months and 120 gold pieces of training time. So he divides these things up. So 1 point, pole arms, daggers, maces, club, basic infantry. 2 points, thrown daggers, javelins, bowling, morning stars, flails, battle axe, advanced infantry. 2 points, but you have to pay as if it were 3 in terms of gold, horse riding, mounted lance. 3 points, the one-handed sword, the quarterstaff. 3 points paid as 4 crossbows. 3 points paid as 6 basic cavalry. 4 points, two-handed sword. 4 points paid as 6 bow. 6 points paid as 11 for some reason, advanced cavalry. 8 points paid as 12 longbow, composite bow, and sling. Sling seems way out of whack. That would be a 1-point skill in my book. And then 16 points, but paid at 26, expert catapult operator and sapper. So you pay that, and then you have your time, and you'll need to find someone who knows that, who can train. He also explains that when you have something in sort of the same class, it's only the incremental cost. So if you had a sword and you'd already learned that, and you 3 points, right? A two-handed sword is 4 points, but you only have to pay the difference, which is the 1 extra point, and then you would know how to use a four-handed sword, two-handed sword, and then he also says the reverse is true. If you had learned two-handed sword, then I guess you get the one-handed sword for free. That's what it seems like to me, although I'm not sure why. It seems cheaper, I guess, if you do that way, right? And then he also has in here the different types of people you could hire, and he's got ideas about how much you have to pay to hire someone. So like if you get somebody who has a 1-point skill, say pole arms, they're going to be cheaper than if you hire people who know how to use a sword, which is a 3-point skill. I think that's the other thing he's trying to say in here is how much it costs to get the different type of people you could hire. Prodigious plate mail is their letters column. And Jeff Quist has written in and said, in Booklet K, you show how much things cost and how many might be in a person's shop, but you don't say how much it costs them to acquire that. And then he also talks about the different type of merchants that might be in villages. What he says is, look, what it's going to cost, I'm going to leave that up to the referee to decide how much these goods cost and how much money someone's able to make. But his general comment is, look, places are going to be self-sufficient. And so the type of thing that's sold and the amount that's on stock is going to be whatever the local community would consume. And they're not going to have, 1,000 bottles of wine in a village of 25 people. You're not going to have a rare book dealer in a village of 10 people, right? The exception to that is if you've got a village or town that's on a trade route, so maybe that provides an exceptional amount of trade compared to the local population. And if there's some particular skill that someone has, like they're the only one who knows how to make, something, then maybe, and you decide people would be willing to travel to that town or village to get it because they need that person to make it for them, then maybe you'd see some unusual exceptions to that rule. Bill Owen has talked to Mark Whitehead, John Stonespire, and Mark Summerlett about painting miniatures, and he says they're really good, all three of them, and so he's gotten sort of collective wisdom from them about different things. Like they all like to prime, their miniatures before they paint them. They talk about the different types. Some of them use poly S, some of them are using oils, and gives different ideas of how to do armor and how to do faces and stuff like that, how to do dry washing and all that to add highlights. So then we have these two big articles. For whatever reason, the way they printed them, one had the left half of a page and the right half of the page, and they've got 8-10 pages of this newspaper or journal are devoted to these two articles. So the first one by John Huber is called Dungeon Scratching and Sniffings. It's a great idea. The actual article itself is probably not the best execution on this idea, but it does a really good idea of telling a referee, hey, here's a bunch of things you probably want to think about. And the charts and tables do a great job of giving you all kinds of creative ideas of things to do to make things a little more interesting so you don't have the same thing room after room. So he says, when I want to fill out my dungeon, I roll D100. He's got this little chart. 1 to 41, it's empty. 42 to 46, special occurrence. We'll talk about that. 47 to 51, a little bit of treasure. 52 to 70, a monster. 71 to 88, treasure and monster. 89 to 94, treasure and special occurrence. 95 to 100, monster and special occurrence. Okay. So, and he even has tables like if there's going to be a human in there, let's roll to see what race the person is, what sex the person is, what alignment the person is, what class the person is, any special abilities they might have, what level they might be, and so on. But so then we do get into some interesting stuff here. So here's his special occurrences. I think he has 10 tables like this, each of which you roll for the table, 1 through 10, and then you roll on the table 1 to 20. Special occurrences. What happens when you do something like pull a lever, open a door or a chest, enter a room, or pass through a gate or an archway or whatever? And he's got all these different ideas. He's got traps in there like, gas, rocks, arrows, daggers, spears, crossbow bolts come out. Pits, instant transportation, gain levels, gain abilities, lose ability scores, transport, teleport to a random location, release a monster, release some treasure, cause some type of lycanthropy, become invisible, become ethereal, cause you to vanish, change your alignment, change your class, and it goes on and on. And so again, I don't know about I think if you did a dungeon where you just randomly rolled all this stuff, it'd be a little wonky, but it's really a great set of charts to sit down and think about, hey, this idea I'm going to use in my next dungeon, right? That kind of thing. All right, so the next thing are random accessories. What do you see in there? An altar, animal waste, arches, armor, bars, beds, blackjacks, blankets, bolts of cloth, spider silk, books, bookshelves, bottles, braziers, bricks, a bust, candle, candle holder, canvas, carpets, carvings, caverns, chairs, rocking chairs, chains, chalices, chests, Again, it seems like your dungeon would have no continuity if you just did this randomly. But to look through there and help you think through some details, I think these charts are fantastic. He has so many here. He has D100. He's got 3 different rows of this stuff. So anyway, it goes on and on. It's really good. Another thing he says you could do randomly is cause your characters to hear some type of sound. Again, don't think the randomness of it, but one of the things I think a good dungeon master is going to do is incorporate not just the visual, right, into descriptions. Remember that you have 6 senses, and give as many of those as you can in your description of what's going on. Include sounds, include smells, and he's got, charts for that stuff in here. So, some of it's weird. I don't know about bagpipes, but banging, barking, bellowing, bleeding, booming, bouncing, breathing, breeze, bubbling, burrowing, carving, chanting, cheering, all these different sounds that you could hear. And again, I think if it were me, I'd want those things to be connected in a thoughtful way, but making sure you include that is really good stuff. And then he has a chart here for hiding your treasure. So he's got a chart to roll and see where the treasure is. But the treasure appears when someone dies, a particular person. Maybe it's a monster. When you approach it, when you come into the room, when you touch a particular thing, when a particular thing is opened or closed or moved, when you get near it. It's under the bones of something. It's inside a book. It's inside the ceiling. It's inside a brazier, like underneath of the coals. Underneath is, obviously it wouldn't be paper, right? But there could be things under there. So great ideas about where to put treasure, especially if you're the kind of dungeon master who's really happy to put something in there and let the characters never find it. Like, who's going to say, oh, there's a brazier. I dig through the hot coals and see if there's a magic ring at the bottom of that. Not many characters probably do that. Anyway, again, really good charts for ideas. I don't really like the randomness of it, but I do like the creativity of going through and thinking of all these different things for you. He had ideas in here I'd never really, really thought about. Again, other things to modify your treasure. Where is it? It's at the bottom of the thing I roll. It's behind something. It's in the ceiling. It's encased in something. It's floating in something. It's been liquefied. It's been miniaturized. You can see through it, so it's translucent. All these kind of different ideas. Pretty good. And then he's got his smells, right, to add to what you hear. Don't forget to add things that you smell. Blood, brimstone, breakfast, chicken soup, cinnamon, cooking, death, evil. I'm not really sure what evil smells like. Flatulence, fear, fish, both fresh and old fish, flowers, foul odor of chemicals, foul odor rotting flesh, fruit, garbage, garlic, glue, incense, medicine, mildew. You know, some of these make more sense than others depending on whether you're in a building or you're in a dungeon or whatever. But again, lots of really good ideas of things to think about in terms of smells. That's the first big article. Here's the second one. This is Fantastic Furnishings by Tom Zarbach, who had a similar thought, but really focused just on what's in a room. And so the first thing you do is roll to see what the floor looks like. There's another chart to see what the walls are. I mean, things like pine wood, maple wood, oak wood, redwood, birch wood, walnut, gray marble, pink marble, black marble, slab stone, etc. And what's on the floor? Is it damp, dusty, very damp, slightly damp, wet, slightly wet, very dusty, slightly dusty, very wet, again. Cobwebs, carpet, straw. I think sand might be on there too. And then he has this chart. This is the meat and potatoes of it. What's in there on the floor? He has another one for what's on the walls. Tables, chairs, desks, cabinets, beds, pots, all this stuff. And then whatever you pick, there's another chart to go to. And sometimes there's 4 other charts to go to. Like if you get a table or a chair, man, you get like 6 charts to roll through. What's it made of? Different types of wood. What kind of conditions is it in? What shape is it? How big is it? You know, maybe there's stuff what's on it. I don't remember, but he had like a bunch of different things he had to roll if it was a table, several if it's a chair. Some of it less so, pots and so forth. But then even with that kind of stuff, there's at least one other one, like what kind of condition it's in usually, that you got to go and roll on. So that one I thought was, again, let me go back, was interesting because you do want to be more descriptive. There's a table in there. There's a table, you know, I mean, there's a 6-foot wooden table that's, you know, mildewy and covered in cobwebs and deeply carved and grooved. Looks like the wood's rotting. You know, go to the other guy's thing. Smells in the room of sort of rotten wood or mildewy wood. You don't know whether if you sat in the chairs they'd collapse. You know, just a little extra detail. Those are really good ideas. Okay. The advice column, and this is almost like a disclaimer. And remember, at this time, people are really thinking about TSR and what TSR does or doesn't want you to say. And these guys have a written agreement with them. They're paying them royalties, and they're allowed to use the name. So he says, none of the guidelines we publish are official. They should be viewed as aids to be used or not used as you see fit. We have the new Basic, and Advanced is coming out soon, which will eliminate a lot of the ambiguities in the original set that caused us to kind of come up with our own guidelines. We will adapt future guidelines to conform to the rules as soon as possible, but bear in mind, while our publication is approved for use with D&D, it is not official D&D, only a variant in respect to guidelines and interpretations. The closer relationships with the great folks at TSR should amplify and improve the value of your guild manyfold. So big, you know, pat on the back. We love TSR. Then they have some abbreviations here, things they use, like they call things HTK, hits to kill, instead of hit points. A lot of them are pretty normal. But he just has these in here in case you see the abbreviations somewhere in their products that you'll know what they're talking about. Then we have the booty list here, right, which is always interesting because if we zoom in, it shows you where they are in time. This, of course, is late 77, and they're up to number 51 in the booty list. One of the things that I think is interesting about this, too, is some stuff is now beginning to disappear. Some of the earlier products that they'd made, either they don't have anymore or they've redone them, and you can't necessarily get those. Plus, you know, at some point they print stuff, they run out, right? And so some of the stuff begins to fall off of the list. They don't have everything 1 to 51 available. And the other thing is at the bottom of this page, is Stop the Presses. He says he's been to the Metro Detroit Gamers WinterCon 6 in Michigan, which was a very good con, and 700 gamers were there. He's talked about looking forward to going to Origins, and most importantly, I thought, was the announcement. TSR has told us that they're in the process now of binding the monster manual, which will soon be coming out. And it tells you, it's 112 pages, 350 monsters, 200 illustrations. Hardback, $9.95. And Middle Earth by SPI, he saw it and he said that looks like a really great game. You get the War of the Ring, which is being produced by that company. Battle Line is releasing a game called Machiavelli. Archworld, a Fantasy Games Unlimited release. And Rivets, Metagaming Concepts minigame. Okay, They've got some stuff that they sell because remember, Judges Guild not only produces stuff, but they also are a reseller. Here's their D&D advertisement. You can see they've got all the basic stuff that was out at this point, which is always kind of interesting, I think, from a historical perspective. He does mention at this point in 77, Dragon Volume 1, 1 through 6, now out of print. Those things are really collectible if you have one of those original early days. Dragon Magazine. Remember, initially Dragon was every other month, and then on the off month they had like a magazine called Little Wars, which is more for wargaming. Here's a company called Garrison Miniatures that's got stuff for sale. And then on the next page, this is full page ad for Grenadier Miniatures, which has Wizards and Warriors, which is sort of their fantasy line, as well as a number of medieval things, which are going to give you the knights and so forth. Der Krieger spells, Fantastiques, heritage models for sale. And then up here at the top, SPI has Middle-earth and War of the Ring games for sale. And Chaosium has released a few games, Elric, All the World's Monsters, White Bear and Red Moon, and Nomad Gods, and Troy. And then the back page here has this a number of things for sale. I like the stuff that's right here in the middle in particular. Fantasy Games Unlimited, which has Chivalry and Sorcery, among others. And then all these Frazetta posters that they're selling. And they don't have them all, because some of them are no longer available, but they have a number of Frazetta posters that you could buy direct from them. There's a little comic in here again for Star Boars, and this guy says, R2DZ, you ought to be ashamed of yourself staring at this alien, and then he says he can't help it if he is not as handsome or as smart as us. Ha ha ha. There continues, of course, to be good art in here, and I'll get myself out of the way, let you guys see this a little better. This art, to me, looks like it might be sort of more clip art that they got from some other book and are reusing in here. Plus, I don't see anyone's name on it, which is the other reason why I think maybe this was not. Maybe one or two of these things are actually being drawn, but most of these look like they came out of some other source. Now, this, of course, is original stuff. And really, like I said, the one which was on the first page of the newspaper, it's got that GALDEA. It says here, illustration by Sorcerers Guild. So I'm saying they must have had a connection with those guys. But the art is really good. Remember, they had really good art in the last issue as well. And then they have a little Merry Christmas here from the folks at Judges Guild with the Star Boars people, and then I don't know what the lizard's doing there, and Santa Claus. And this is Pixie Bledsoe's art. And this is, I think, very similar to what was in the Modron header of the Judges Guild Journal, notes for that. Okay, so then that is the newspaper, if you will, the Judges Guild Journal. And now we're going to turn to the main product. Believe it or not, after all that, this is the main product, the Wilderlands of High Fantasy, Part 2. It's a module-sized 8.5 by 11 booklet. Here it's stapled. And then you got 2 maps that came with it. This time they're going to tell you about a part of the world campaign around the city of Tarantus. And then the other map is an area called Valen. Okay. So here is the bigger map of Judges Guild campaign world. Remember right here, this little orange circle, that is the city-state of the Invincible Overlord. That is sort of home base or ground zero. And then last time we had 2 and 3. So this time we have 5 and 4. Tarantus is over here on map 4, and Valen is up here in map 5. And then over here too, we mentioned on the first page of the journal, the city-state of the world emperor, and that is over here to the east. We're on a map we haven't developed yet. Okay, here's the table of contents from the booklet. You can see there. We're going to talk about this stuff. All right, hirelings. He's got a little article on hirelings. Hirelings are any creature directly controlled by a player. So in his campaign, I go out and hire hirelings, my fighter, right? I get to decide what they do and say what they do when we come into combat or whatever. He talks about loyalty, which we're going to mention in a minute, that you have to, of course, understand so you can know whether they follow your commands in spite of the fact that maybe things are dangerous, etc. Okay. Non-player characters, cut-ups. This seems, again, a little tongue-in-cheek to me. NPCs can get you into hot water. 50% of all encounters are probably caused by your NPCs. They choose to insult people nearby. Those people have friends, and then you're going to end up with trouble. And so he's got this die roll that you make depending on 4-sided opposite alignment, 6-sided different alignment, 8-sided opposite sex. To see what you do, sneeze on them, cursed at them, tripped them, punched them, robbed them, laughed at them. And then if they're opposite sex, you'll add in some inappropriate behavior like fondling, hugging, trying to kiss them or something like that. And then you end up obviously with you roll your reaction roll, and you roll 2d6 to see how they react to whatever it is that's going on. You get some bonuses in there for your charisma, whether you're the same race or a race that doesn't like each other, whether you interacted with them, if it's a third party that you interacted with economically, if they feel like there's been good economic terms, that'll help, etc. He has a short article on wishes and limited wishes. The main thing he says is essentially, I think, you need to limit that stuff. It's not anything the character can dream up. And so for limited wishes, he said, we'll let you alter the time stream in a very limited way. And so he gives the example of, I limited wish the dragon didn't breathe and burn up the magical item. Okay, that'll happen. But if you said, I just wish I had that magical item, right, from out of the ether, he said limited wishes will not do that for you. So he says basically anything in the last week time maximum, you can sort of change a decision, change a behavior, change like a bad dice roll, that kind of thing is what you can do with a limited wish. But it's basically, if you're thinking about the timeline, you can make a little tiny variance, but you can't just like reach out into, out there and just grab something that wasn't already on the timeline and make it happen or give it to you. Full wishes, have better effects, I guess. But he says in his world they have repercussions and even what he calls splash effects. And this could have used more narration because I don't really understand the chart completely. He's got down, the guideline is like basically starts with no personal gain to the person making the wish is going to have the best possible outcome to personal gain, malicious intent, greed, and then for some reason on top of that we've got magic armor, other types of magic, staff, rings, or wands, which have a plus in there, which I don't understand what that's for. Has an asterisk, but I don't see anywhere where the asterisk is key to tell me what the asterisk is for. He has how many gold pieces you can get, what's the chance it'll be granted, and no personal gain, 98%, all the way down to the bottom is only 10% chance that the wish even gets granted. Chance of repercussions, 2%, all the way up to 80%. What the repercussion is, contrary to what you wished, a gripe, a slow, sleep, plague, leprosy, blindness, insanity, death, or a time trap. Chance of splashing those around you, I don't know if that means the party or physically in a nearby area, starts at 0, 2, 4, 8, 16, 30, 40, 50, 60% chance. So the higher you go, the more chance other people will be negatively affected. Damage starts at 1 to 3 and goes up to 8d6, so 8 to 48 points of damage. And then if it's not a spell, where the wish is coming from sort of maximizes. So if it's a gem, you're that first row. The maximum a gem can give you is 100 gold pieces. Artifacts, a well, sword, demigod, a deck of cards, I guess, a ring, a genie, a freebie, or a god. And as you go up, the maximum that they can give you increases, and then the chance of what they're giving that'll actually come true, of course, is decreasing as it goes down. I didn't fully understand the concept there. And then wishes for life or death. It seems to me that what he's saying is at best it's temporary because it goes alive for 1 day, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 days based on a D6 roll. And then you might get full strength. You might need to rest. You might come back with full hit points, 1 hit point. But again, that's his concept of how to deal with wishes. Always a really hard thing for a judge or referee to come up with how to deal with wishes. Then he has a chart for quests and geases. And he's got a D20 this, I guess, is if you don't have something in mind, roll what the geas is going to be. Guard a creature, destroy a creature, rescue an object, carry an object, fetch an object, etc. The action, contemplate, expectorate, spin, stomp, clap, sacrifice. The creature, so you might say you're going to stomp on a merchant or a pilgrim or a druid or a giant. So that you roll what you're supposed to do, the action to that, the action you're going to perform, the creature against whom you're going to perform it, and then the object, if there's an object involved, all on D20. If you don't do your geas, then you will lose 1 strength per day, and you will have some curse. He says it increases 5%. I'm not really sure what that means, but 5% for every day. And you get a cursed D20. Everything's from growing warts, being smelly, taller, shorter, growing new parts, fear, sleep, lunacy, truthfulness, lying, deafness, crying fits, laughing fits. And the one thing is to grow parts or have new parts or shrink your parts, like nose, ear, eye, hands, feet, fingers, head, teeth. So this weird stuff happens to you basically if you don't do a geas. He has an article on income, and he basically just goes through the size of your town or your village or your population determines how much income you're going to produce in a year. And then he says you can try to take that more, like 1/12 a month, but you could try to take more of it all at once if you needed it for some reason. That can cause bad reaction among the people that live there. And he goes through all that. He also gives you a particular NPC, Count Kalerdic, who is known as the coordinator. He is the feared and mysterious personal avenger of the Overlord. And I guess in his one alter ego, he's sort of a happy-go-lucky buffoon who loves throwing parties, and he's kind of boring, and all of his courtesans and people that hang out with him are boring. But in reality, they're all these guys who put on, like, the black mask and the black armor and go out and do bad things to people if the Overlord doesn't like them. Okay, so the two main things, again, just like last time, this campaign setting concept that they have is a lot different from what you get from, say, the Greyhawk book when you got the Greyhawk setting, Once Upon a Time, Forgotten Realms material. This is much skinnier. And so you have these maps, and these maps have little tiny hexes in them, right? And if you zoom in, I don't know if the camera will grab that, but there are little tiny numbers on each of those hexes. And so here are the villages. And if you go for the number, he'll tell you what the village is in which numbered hex, the name of the village, the population, type, meaning like is it humans or is it hobbits, elves, goblins, gnolls, etc. The civilization level, the alignment generally of the people that are there, at least the leadership, the name of the ruler, that person's level, alignment, class, type, and their primary resource, fishes, pearls, markets, oil, hides, salt. Then they have the ravaged ruins, and so there's some places, again, on this map where there are particular ruins, and there's a little blurb, and these blurbs are like great idea starters, right? So at this ruins, you'll find 3 worm-eaten treasure chests on the seabed, and in the middle, there's an electric eel. At this other location, a vine-covered stone chair large enough for a hill giant beneath a huge oak tree. Just little blurbs like that of what you find in these different areas that have the ruins. He also has some castles and citadels, and again there he tells you the location and who's in charge. He doesn't give them a name, he just gives you the class, level, alignment, how many men are there, etc. And then they have the idyllic isles, and so all these on these maps where they have the little tiny islands there, they're going to tell you about each of those isles. And so just pick one at random, right? There's an aged cleric who desires an adventurer to lead him on his last great journey to the court of the ruler of Valen. He's blind and slightly senile. He has foreknowledge of an imminent doom, which only a relic owned by the ruler of Valen can eliminate. So again, little tiny adventure threads, and he's got a whole bunch of those. And then he has the lurid lairs, which are monsters. Sharks are here, lobsters, pigs, trolls, salamanders, owlbears, or whatever. And he gives you a hex where this stuff would happen. Okay. So here's the map, and I want to point out down here, this orange circle, this is the town of Tarantus. And I think one of the very last things they do, so they have the city-state of the Invincible Overlord, which you've already done a video on. It's the main one, right? And then there's the World Emperor, and that product will come out later. And I think Tyrannus is like one of the, maybe the only other one that they do, certainly the last one they do, or the full-blown thing. It's got, I think, a couple booklets and maps and stuff to give you all the details about this, but that comes down the line. But this is an important city in his campaign world. So there's the map, and if you look here at the map, you get, there's more detail. You've got the major rivers and the woods, and some different places are named on here. The Plain of 10 Battles, Lake of the Crown Beast. Here's the ocean, Tarantus again. And then we've got the Forest of the Crying Woods, Marshes of Rust. And again, remember, he says, I only put the really big waterways on there. And there's all kinds of tiny streams. And in the last setting, there were charts for you to roll that stuff up. Same thing here for Valen. This is map 5. Start with villages. You've got the ruins, citadels, castles, and the idyllic isles. And there's a whole bunch of those isles here, because if you look on this map, right, a whole bunch of this is water. And so all those little islands he's got on here, so a little bit of adventure threads of different things you would find there. We've got the Wilderland Mountains up here at the top. And then again, we go out into the sea, the Pintworken Sea. Then on the other side, we got the Shielding Mountains, the Dragon Woods. Then this place is mostly open sea here. The Changeling Forest. And again, so again, you had a detailed map for the judge, and then a really not detailed map you could show the players, where it basically gives you the outline of the major islands. I don't even know if it would give you all the small islands, but it wouldn't give you names and not even all the detail about where forests were, stuff that make the players go explore and fill that in as they went. Then the other thing that's over here is this place called Hubric of Hag Hill. And here's the map that came with it. And it says, Sir Hubric has ruled Hag Hill for the past 14 years. He enlarged the small castle, shocked the villagers by occupying the long-deserted Tower of Torpid Terror. The large tower is the most ancient structure in the surrounding area. Legend says that a terrible creature of the elder days sleeps beneath it. While Hubric laughs off the superstition, he did prudently seal off all entrances to the dungeon beneath the tower. And they give you his stats. He's a 7th level fighter, and all the major people that hang out with him give him stats. So a few legends and rumors around there. Just trying to flesh this out as a slightly more robust place you could go and visit on the map. Then he has all these similar charts for the map of the city-state, which is map 1. He's got the villages, he's got the citadels and castles, he's got the lurid lairs, the islands. I don't know that he has any. I don't know that he had any ruins, but one of the things, that's interesting is, so we just did a video on this initial publication, and then there was this publication. Those were both 16-page booklets, but then they came and they did you this booklet, which looks very similar. But this is 32 pages, so it's everything from both of the booklets I just showed you. And they sold this as a combined product that would give you not only maps 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, but you would also get map 1, the area around the city-state of the Invincible Overlord. So you could get all the maps and all the material in one booklet, all in one product to start you off on the Wilderlands of High Fantasy campaign. I think the 32-page version of this, I believe came out in 1978, but I'm not positive about the publication date on that. Okay. And so anyway, you get the same stuff, right, with some detail. He has a little bit of information here on trading. As again, remember, communities are self-sufficient, so that's going to give you basically they produce what they consume. But he's got some interesting ideas there of different things you might want to buy and prices and stuff like that, including random stuff like fur pelts and a bushel of fruit, but maybe you'd also like to buy a dragon egg or a goblin or a kobold or a Medusa. I'm not sure. Those things have never been for sale in my campaigns, but I guess they were for sale in Bob's. Just a completely random chart here on morale for your NPCs. Kind of ties back to the very first pages of this booklet. And here's what we do. We roll 2d6 when NPCs face any type of stressful situation, and then we determine what will they do. You get modifications, based on your charisma and other things of your character or the leader. They could panic. If they roll a 2, 12, they'll be stalwart, they'll charge in and keep fighting for at least another 2 rounds, and everything in between based on their reaction. And then we have a chart here for the technological or civilization level of a village. You roll a d10, and if you get remember that was back in the day, a die that went 0 to 9 twice. And so he says if you get a 0, you can choose to make it a 0 or 10. 0 is anarchy, 10 is a dictatorship. But so he gives you the type of civilization, the type of leader, the type of defenses, and the type of technology that they utilize. Population density. He says there are 13,000 acres, being 21.65 square miles in each little 5-mile hex. And there's like hunting tribes need a square mile for every member. 1 square mile of farmland supports 320 people. So there's a clear benefit depending on whether you have agriculture or you sort of hunter-gatherer types. And he talks about baronies. If you build a stronghold, you can clear 4 hexes, 5 miles each, from the hex where your stronghold is located, and you can decide what you want to do there. Then we have some art, which I always just like to take a look at. So we've got these drawings. The first couple, Pixie Bledsoe, the cloaked person underneath of the tree, and then this little demon creature up here at the top. And this other one looks like, again, it might be some type of clip art they got from somewhere else to me. That concludes Judges Guild O from 1977. And it's the second part to the Wilderlands of High Fantasy campaign. A really great setting. You get the city-state of the Invincible Overlord right there in the middle to use as your sort of primary home base or major city for people to go to. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I hope you're enjoying the series, and I hope you're subscribed. If you have friends who might be interested in our content, I hope you'll send them our way, and hopefully they'll join our subscriber base. Have a great day. Until next time, my friends, keep rolling 20s.